So we're building sustainable farm robots, and we are trying to use small, smart machines to change the way we think about managing our farm. And so what we're really trying to do is to digitize the field. So digitize both the growing crop and the soil. And this is the first stepping stone, I think, to a different way of farming. We want to move away from thinking about the field as our management unit and get to the point where we think about the individual plant as our management unit, so that we can start to take decisions, gather data, and then ultimately take action on a plant by plant basis. So we're building 3 robots: Tom, Dick, and Harry. Tom is monitoring, so he's doing that digitizing bit, taking a measurement from every square meter of soil, measuring every single plant in a field. And I should say that we're targeting cereal crops, and wheat is our first target. And then that is all analysed using artificial intelligence. And this is the bit that for me is the most exciting part of being involved in a robotics company. It's not really about the robots, although they're crucial. It's about what that enables. And for us, what it's going to enable is a much more accurate application and a much more, we think, environmentally friendly application or action taking in fields. So our action robots are Dick and Harry. Dick is non-chemical weeding, which is potentially an enormous breakthrough for thinking of groundswell and no-till, but non-chemical weeding, so taking a really highly accurate weed map created by Tom and then presented in Wilma, our AI operating system, and killing those weeds without using chemicals. So our first product is going to be an electrically charged wand, if you like, killing the weeds, so physically touching those weeds and killing them without using chemicals. And then later iterations will be micro-spraying of chemicals, micro-spraying of fertiliser, which is Dick, so the crop care bit is all Dick. And then Harry is an AI-driven planter, so placing individual seeds in the ground, again a no-till robot. Our initial, we're not there yet, but our initial thoughts are that this would be a punch planting robot. And again, AI-driven, artificial intelligence-driven, so that it is varying the seed spacing and seed depth based on research, based on an understanding of the soil, and based on an AI prediction of profitability, so that you start to go through a field and go, okay, what is the likely profitability of this particular patch that I'm on, and therefore do I plant or do I not plant? So again, a totally different way of thinking about how we manage our farms, and we think that robotics are the pathway to get there. The data is gathered by Tom initially. We can do that. The reason we have 2 different robots is because Tom is going to be really cheap to make. So we just have loads and loads of Toms, and it's there all the time. So I'm at Groundswell today, but there'll be a monitoring robot that's gathering data on my farm all the time. And then yes, so Tom is going, okay, there's a weed here, and Wilma is recognising the weed. It's a broadleaved weed, it's a grass weed, whatever it is. And then ultimately, of course, doing disease recognition and doing nutrient recognition, nutrient analysis on a per plant basis. So this plant is lacking nitrogen. This plant has got a septoria problem. And then Dick will go out and treat just that. So if there's a weed there, Dick will go out to that exact location and kill that weed. And if this plant has got a disease issue, Dick will spray just that plant in the amount that is required, and not spraying the whole field because we've seen it in one plant or in a particular patch. Or even, unfortunately, what we tend to do a lot in farming is not actually see the disease at all, but think that it could be there or that it's at a high risk time, and then we spray it anyway. And this, the evidence is starting to stack up against farmers, unfortunately, around chemicals ending up in the wrong place, fertiliser ending up in the wrong place. And I don't lay the blame for that at the door of the farmer. I think it's because we're using machinery that has been designed to be as quick as possible. So we're using machinery that's designed to cover the ground as quickly as possible, to limit the amount of time that there is a human being sitting in the cab of that tractor. And if we had a rethink and redesigned the machinery so that it was as accurate as possible, then and made that the uppermost engineering consideration, and then deal with the scale by just having lots of them, then a whole new way of farming, a much more accurate and much more environmentally friendly way of farming becomes possible. And I see this as being the dawn of a digital age of farming, and ultimately where that leads, if we think about cereal farming, is per plant harvesting, so that we get to a point where we're actually not only able to place an individual seed in the ground and then monitor that seed through its life on a per plant basis, we're actually able to harvest an individual plant, and only when that plant is ready. You think about the implications of that are that suddenly you could potentially have multiple species growing in the same field. So you could have a plant that is fixing the nitrogen next to a plant that is using the nitrogen or requires the nitrogen. They could both be commercial crops. You could also have a non-commercial crop that attracted pollinators next to a commercial crop that needed the pollinator. The reason we don't do those things, or we very rarely see those things, is because it makes the machinery inefficient. So it makes it very difficult for the sprayer driver to know what chemical they can apply. It makes it very difficult for the combine driver, and so we have big square fields with monocultures, single crops in there, because it is making the machinery as efficient as possible. Well, what we're saying is, well, let's redesign that so that we're trying to make the plant as productive as possible. We're trying to make the soil as healthy as possible. Now, what could the countryside look like? Well, if we've got small, smart, agile machines, we could, as I said, have big square fields, but with lots of things growing in them. But we could also have machines that are awkwardly shaped, or the topography is a bit strange, or it's at the end of a lane that's difficult to access. All of those fields, which are not currently in production, could become productive, or could be used for whatever you want to use them for, because we're using different hardware and using different software to enable that. So I see this as, potentially the most significant change that has ever happened in farming. And I think that as a result of that, there's a whole new range of opportunities open to the farmer. And that's why I think that this is the most exciting time there has ever been to be a farmer, because we are at the dawn of something really significant. Firstly, on the legislation side, we're keen to avoid some of the issues that drone companies have come up against. So we are keen to try and develop a code of best practice for how robots are going to be used on farms, and we're already addressing that. And that's a key element, because there's safety issues. There's how do humans interact with these things? All of these things need to, there needs to be a code that we get people to sign up to for that. In terms of wider policy, well, I think one of the biggest changes that we're going to see in policy is a move away from subsidies, or a move away from direct subsidies. And I think that actually the timing of this coming into farming at a time when that's happening is critical. Our direction there will not be so much to try and directly influence policy, but it'll be about trying to get farmers to shift their mindset to this new framework, where actually what robots do, and artificial intelligence, what those things together do, is create a huge amount of freedom of time for the farmer to become, I think, more market focused, and to think about, okay, what are the opportunities that have become available that perhaps previously weren't available when you were spending a lot of time driving the machinery. So it's more sort of operating within the policy frameworks that exist. And in terms of how we get farmers to adopt, I mean, as we all know, the ultimate test will be seeing these things work on farms, and that will be really how farmers adopt this is by seeing it, by seeing these things in the neighbour's field, or trying to understand how it could work on their farm. And I think we're trying very hard to address the human impact of this technology. And one of the things that we're launching today is something called our Farm Ambition Blueprint, which is a coaching program for farmers where we get them to think about the technology that's coming into farming, both stuff that is not just small robot company stuff, but stuff that is already in the agricultural sphere, but also technology that exists that hasn't yet been applied to farming. We get them to think about how that could impact their business, but the most crucial bit is about getting them really clear on what they want to achieve for themselves and what they want to achieve for the future of their business. Now, those are questions that I think farmers haven't really asked themselves. Or a lot of farmers haven't really got absolutely clear what their vision for the future is. But right now, with these new technologies coming in, it's a crucial time, and I think the best farmers of the future will be those who are really clear on what their vision is, and also really clear on how they can take action, how they can turn these sort of vague, sort of slightly foggy plans into real concrete actions, and then also how you're going to use this technology to take advantage and to help you get to where you want to go to.